Welcome to another fun-filled Monday edition of Second City Sports. We're live in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago, along with Miss Ricky McGee, which is she. I am Sydney Brownhead. That's me. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter, X, and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You can follow me at Kayla McGee on the Twitter, X, and Kayla's McGee on the IG.
Make sure you download that Sports Zone Chicago app wherever you get your apps. You want to know why? Because we said so, that's why. And also, you can catch up on the other live shows that we have airing throughout the week. So you happen to miss you, you can go back and watch them and listen to them at your own leisure. Make sure you download that Sports Zone Chicago app today. Speaking of Sports Zone Chicago, please give us a follow on all social media platforms on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Once again, please find Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms. And please subscribe to our podcast at War Media Podcast. That's WARR Media, PODCASTS. We are available on all podcast platforms, including the iHeartRadio app. And while you're at it, please give War Media a follow on all social media platforms at WARR Media. Once again, that's at War Media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at WARR Media. And thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
We are unapologetically fun, and we have very definite opinions. If you have any definite opinions during our 2-hour extravaganza we call a Sports Talk Radio Show, you can always get at us at the comments section at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in those questions or comments in the comments section. Lakina will get them up on the screen for you. But if you just decide to do something silly or stupid or dumb, I've given Lakina full power to give you fools to bill and beer boot. But before we begin, we must remind you that you can catch Sports Zone Chicago now available on Roku TV. That's right. So celebrate with the squad and get with the program. Sports Zone Chicago is now available on Roku TV. If you already have a Roku television, just tap on that sports folder and download that Sports Zone Chicago app. If you don't have a Roku television, you have some handheld devices laying around your iPhone, iPad, iTouch, your personal PC or your Chromebook. Just hit up the Google Play Store, download the Roku TV app, and access Sports Zone Chicago through that avenue. So no more excuses. Celebrate with the squad and get with the program. Sports Zone Chicago is now available on Roku TV.
Anytime, anywhere.
And you know we will provide.
We will provide. And of course, we got a busy show coming up on Second City Sports. Right at the top of the next hour, we're going to have someone we haven't had in the show in a while, Sid, our buddy Kayla Anderson. She is now with 104.5 The Fam, co-host of Ramon, Kayla and Will every morning from 6 to 10 Central Time. So we'll catch her. We'll go do our divisional preview, starting with the AFC South. Of course, we'll do Old School TV Monday, kind of a more recent passing. Baseball, of course, some changes at the top of some of these divisions and a whole lot more. But we got another good buddy that's with us right now. So introduce him for us, please.
Yes, he's been with the Big Ten Network since its inception in 2007. He hosts every big time show on that network. And with the college football season kicking off this past weekend, we're going to discuss those games that took place and the big weekend that's coming up here as the rest of college football gets underway, including teams locally and nationally in the Big Ten to help us do that. He is Mr. Dave Revsine, a friend of the show, the host on the Big Ten Network. Dave, welcome back. How are you?
Wow, I did not expect applause. Sydney, Lakina, great to be with both of you. Thanks so much for the kind introduction.
Well, so that's what Sid does. He's always says, and me too. We try, but Dave, I know you guys do the campus tour. Y'all been doing it for years. So we always have going team by team like we did last year because we missed a couple teams. But what impressed you? Teams and which team do you think you have that breakout in the Big Ten this year?
Well, it's hard to not focus on the East first, Lakina, just because that's where the power has been in the Big Ten. Since it went to East and West, the East has won every Big Ten championship game. You've got 3 teams from the Big Ten East, all in the top 7 in the preseason AP poll. It's the first time the Big Ten has had 3 teams in the preseason in the top 7 since 1962, and they all reside in one division. So it just tells you how strong that group is. I would say of that 3, the one that kind of stood out to me in an interesting way was Penn State, just because I think Penn State's on a plane with those other 2. I think, the challenge has been getting past them. Under James Franklin, they're 4-14.
I think we lost the audio there.
Okay.
I think
State could be that story here early on.
I want to go to the Big Ten West, Dave, and focusing on the final line as we go local here. Of course, Brett Bielema is entering year number 3 of that program. Of course, they had a surprising start to last year, but they had a couple bad losses to Michigan State and Purdue at home last year. Hung in there with Michigan in the big house before losing a close one. But how do you see the final line night this year? Because you know as well as I do in college and professional sports, once you become the hunters, now you're the hunted because of what the season you had the previous year. How much pressure was on Brett Bielema to keep this at a program at a competitive level this year?
Well, I think where there's pressure, where it gets really interesting, is that this, at least as of now, is the last year of the East and West. Now, that was before they added Washington and Oregon, so it's possible they could revisit that. But the one thing we can say, although the West hasn't won the Big Ten championship game, you've had Northwestern make it there a couple of times. You had Purdue make it last year. So you've had some programs. Iowa's obviously been there a number of times, and then Wisconsin. You've had some programs that like kind of you wouldn't think of as being Big Ten championship caliber programs. I don't say that in a demeaning sort of way. I'm just saying like Purdue and Northwestern are kind of, and maybe in that second tier rather than that very top tier. And yet, if your timing's right, you can get there and play in the championship game. This might be the last year that Illinois has that chance. And so I think if there's any pressure on them, kind of in the way that you set it up, Sid, maybe the pressure is to get to the championship game, because I do think it sets up well for them. Their schedule is really favorable. I think, the other team that you would look at that hasn't been there, that has been knocking on the door, is Minnesota. Illinois' schedule is far easier than Minnesota's. I thought Illinois stacked up really favorably with everyone we saw, maybe with the exception of Wisconsin. Wisconsin may have more talent across the board, but Wisconsin's breaking in an entirely new system. I mean, they're going to run an air raid offense. It didn't look great in the spring game. So I think the door is open for Illinois. There'll be some questions at quarterback. Luke Altmaier is going to take over as the starter. Is he good enough kind of right off the bat? But they'll be really good on defense. Maybe, the back of that, the secondary is maybe the area where you have some concern because of all the draft picks that you lost. But there's a lot of talent there. Line of scrimmage play, I think, will be fabulous. So I think Illinois is going to be right in the hunt. And then the question is, can they figure out a way to be that team that gets to Indy?
See, Dave, we talked about Iowa, last year, of course, the lack of points that they scored and everything else. Now they got Kate McNamara, of course, transfer from Michigan. Now he's going to be the QB. So do you think they'll score points this year? Because Iowa could probably have maybe be a sleeper in the Big Ten. What do you think?
I think so too, Lakeen. I think they're absolutely in that discussion. I mean, they're on the very fringes of the top 25 in the preseason, so it gives you a sense of kind of what the rest of the country thinks about them. Cade McNamara was hurt the day that we were there. He's been a little banged up, but they showed pictures of him on their social media feed playing in their last scrimmage this last weekend. So to me, that indicates that he's back. He adds a different dimension. I mean, this is a guy who has led a team to the college football playoff. So he is good enough. He is an elite quarterback. And then his tight end, Eric All, came with him, who going into last year, Howard came out of our preseason camp, Howard Griffith last year, saying he thought Eric All was the most athletic tight end in the Big Ten. I ended up getting hurt, and so he didn't have the year that he was hoping to have. But you add in Caleb Brown, who transferred from Ohio State, who's a really talented wide receiver, and all of a sudden you have the makings of something offensively. I think their line's a lot better. That's been a mysterious area of underachievement over the last couple of years because Kirk Ferentz has kind of hung his hat on defense throughout, or on offensive line, I should say, through most of his career. Why they haven't been at that level the last couple of years has been a bit of a head scratcher. And then I mentioned defense. Like, the defense is going to be elite. They're great every single year. They've been 7 straight years now in the top 20 in the nation in scoring defense. There's no reason to think they won't be there this year. So if the offense can just score some points, right? If you can just be average on offense, yeah, Iowa absolutely could compete and be that team that emerges out of the West.
Dave Revsine from the Big Ten Network is hanging out with us here on Second City Sports. We're live in 11 color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid Keenan here with you. Dave, Ryan Day, the head coach of the Ohio State Buckeyes, he has a little bit of a quote-unquote quarterback controversy. I'm using air quotes here for those of you listening back on our podcast replay. Of course, you mentioned the stack of wide receivers that the Buckeyes have, led by Marvin Harrison Jr. Do you think that Coach Day is trying to play the media, or do you think he really has a problem at quarterback on his hands coming into this year?
Well, does he have a problem? I don't know that he's a problem. I think he has two talented guys. Is it unclear who the best guy is? I think based on the day that we were at practice, and again, they show you what they want to show you when we're at practice. And so we always say, it's not as if we're coming unannounced and they don't know that we're watching. They know we're watching. And so, but the reps were split completely evenly. I don't think that either guy, kind of was the clear number one. Devin Brown is a different quarterback than Kyle McCord. He's a little bit more mobile, although I think Kyle McCord can move too offensively. But Devin Brown, I think, is more of a classic dual threat. Kyle McCord has the experience, and he was also Marvin Harrison Jr.'s quarterback in high school. So that's kind of worth something, right? You've got that connection there between the two of them. But this is where I was saying kind of off the top that Penn State may be ahead of Ohio State, at least right now, because Penn State's got a quarterback they know about in Drew Aller, who they got significant playing time for last year. They're better on the offensive line. Like Ohio State's got issues there. And then whether or not, kind of whatever you think of the quarterback, and the track record is there for Ryan Day. Like, I'm sure they'll be fine at quarterback because he always is fine at quarterback. He's better than fine. Like, they're elite at quarterback. But defense is an issue. And, last year they got pushed around those last two games. Like, Michigan ran for 172 yards against them in the fourth quarter. Again, one quarter, they ran for 172 yards. Georgia, over 530 yards of offense against them. So, again, those are against elite teams, but that's who Ohio State measures themselves against. They don't measure themselves against the middle of the Big Ten or the bottom of the Big Ten. They measure themselves against Michigan and Georgia, and they fell short on defense against those teams. So, to me, I think the bigger dilemma for Ryan Day is the defense and Jim Knowles in year two. Do they cut down on the big plays, and are they more physical on the line of scrimmage?
Let's talk about Matt Rule. It's great to see him back in the college ranks. He's now the new coach over in Nebraska. They've got some really solid talent. I know that Tyler Newman, their defensive back, and Malachi Coleman, who they just got that could be an impact freshman. So do you think that maybe Nebraska can kind of surprise some folks?
I think Nebraska could surprise people. I think it would be very surprising were they in that group that we were talking about at the top of the division, Lakina. I just think they're behind, frankly. They had a talent deficit kind of coming into this year. They brought in Jeff Sims, a quarterback from Georgia Tech. He's a really good runner. He has been a little mistake prone. In fact, there's no quarterback active in college football who's averaged more turnovers per game in his career than Jeff Sims. That was a huge issue. Like, they never had a positive turnover ratio under Scott Frost. The defense fell off a cliff a little bit last year. Will it be better? Yeah, I think it'll be better. But is it reasonable to think that they, again, compete for the Big Ten West? I don't think so. I think it's a couple-year build for Matt Rule. But if you look at Matt Rule's track record, if you look at what he did at Temple and look at what he did at Baylor, which was exceptional considering the state that program was in when he took it over, kind of scandal-ridden, and he came in and within 2 years he goes from 11 losses to 11 wins. Had never been done at the Power 5 level. So Matt Rule's the right guy. Just I know it's hard to preach patience to Nebraska fans. I mean, you guys want a crazy stat? Like, Nebraska has the longest bowl drought in the Power 5. Nebraska. I'm a lot older than you are, right? But like, Nebraska was playing for national championships virtually every year when I was a kid and when I was a young adult. And to think of them not even making a bowl when you've got like 80 teams making bowl games, it speaks to how far down they are. And again, the work that needs to be done. But they do have the right person. I'm convinced of that.
Dave, we had you on this program last year, and I was waving about the Minnesota Golden Gophers. I like PJ Fleck a lot, of course. The Golden Gophers had a nice start to last year, but they had a couple bad losses toward the end of the year at Nebraska and at Illinois. Of course, now there were a couple of stories out there about alleged hazing under head coach Fleck. Of course, this coming out the hymns of the Northwest situation. I'm sure we'll get into in a moment, but what do you see that result, if anything, is going to come out of that alleged hazing situation with PJ Fleck, and how much will that be a distraction as the Golden Gophers will start their season this coming weekend?
Yeah, I'm not sure that I don't want to kind of lump it in with the other situation in Northwestern.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like it was only a few players. There have been similar stories in past years. It really seemed like it was more about the culture and just kind of talking about, and I think anyone who, like PJ Fleck, is very transparent about the culture. And yeah, they've got like terminology that they use, and it is very much kind of centered around this, this row the boat mentality. And I think PJ Fleck says right out front, like, this isn't necessarily for everyone. But it feels like the story died down really quickly, just because I think that there wasn't really a whole lot to it. I mean, it was that the culture is a little bit different. And he's the first person to tell you that the culture is a little bit different. So I don't think it will affect them at all. They have a really difficult schedule. I think that's a bigger issue for them than anything. And, if you talk about them again in the vein of Illinois, can you be a team that can win the West and maybe this last opportunity to do that? That to me is the challenge for Minnesota. New quarterback in Nathan Kalakmanis is a Chicago area kid. We saw him some last year. He's really talented. You're replacing Mo Ibrahim, your all-time leading rusher, as well. They did very well in the portal, though. I think they'll be fine there. And then Joe Rossi's an elite defensive coordinator. He really is. So I think Minnesota will be right there. I think the biggest inhibiting factor is the schedule.
What about Maryland? Mike Locke has done a great job with that program. We knew that Tua's a kid brother, of course. Tua has more than made his own name. Last year especially. So, do you think Maryland could perhaps maybe break that mold in the East with Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State?
I don't think it's totally unreasonable, Lakina, to think that they could beat one of them. Like, I could see that happening. Will they be in the top three in the division? I feel like it would be surprising if they were. But Lia Tagovailoa gives them a chance in every game. He's really talented. And they've done a very good job with the skill position players. Like, they found a really good running back in Roman Hemby, who had a nice year last year in the top 6 in FBS among freshmen in rushing yards. He's a big play guy. They've been explosive at the flank for a while here now, and I think they'll continue to be. Got a couple of guys in the portal they like. Ty Felton's a player who's been in the program who they're really excited about. The battle for them has been at both lines of scrimmage. And I would say defensively, they've made some really significant strides. Brian Williams be his second year as the full-time DC. They were way better on defense last year than they were in the previous years. The offensive line is going to be the issue. They only have one returning starter there, their left tackle, Delmar Glaze. And then beyond that, it's an untested group. And so therein kind of lies the problem, is if you can't protect Leah and you can't open those holes for Roman Hemby, and Antoine Littleton, too, is a good running back, that's where I think you've got challenges. So could Maryland, again, can they surprise someone? Hey, they nearly beat Ohio State a few years ago. They're one play away from doing that. So I don't think it's unreasonable at all to think they could do that. Could they win the East? Like, I'd be really shocked. I'm not saying you're suggesting they would, but I'd be really shocked if they were in that conversation, just because I think there are some holes there that some of the other teams don't have.
We're halfway home with our good friend Dave Revsine, host from the Big Ten Network, hanging out with us here on Second City Sports. We're live in the color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid Lakina here with you. Dave, let's talk about the Heisman Trophy candidates. Of course, is head by Caleb Williams, the quarterback out of USC. But you have Blake Corum of Michigan And you have Marvin Harrison Jr. of Ohio State as the other top candidates for the Heisman Trophy. Do you see any other breakout players from the Big Ten that should be considered for the Heisman Trophy this year? If not for the Heisman Trophy, but do you see any unknown players that players that people are not talking about that could have a big year?
Well, I'll take the first part of that question. I mean, I think if Michigan has a great season, I think J.J. McCarthy could get into Heisman discussion. I mean, I could see that as being reasonable. I think Braylon Allen is poised for a huge year at Wisconsin. Whether or not that ends up with him in the Heisman conversation, I don't know. But I just think, like, he went over 1,200 yards against 8-man boxes each of the last 2 years. Like, there's no back in America who faced more 8-man boxes than Braylon Allen did last year, and he still had a huge season. Now, all of a sudden, you think about them, going to this more wide open offensive attack. I look at that and I say, man, he's going to go against 7-man boxes. And so Braylon Allen in the air raid, to me, is a pretty scary player because he was already scary when everyone knew he was getting the ball. So I think that's one. And then, like, a little more off the radar, I don't think his team is good enough for him to be in any kind of a Heisman conversation. But I think Hudson Card's going to have a huge year at Purdue. He was fabulous the day we were there. He's a transfer quarterback from Texas. He can make every throw. They're also going to an air raid attack. He's got a really accomplished coordinator in Graham Harrell, who himself came in 4th in the Heisman balloting his senior year. So I could see Hudson Card, again, not being in that Heisman conversation, but being a quarterback who puts up enormous numbers this year.
Okay, let's talk about Michigan, Dave, because I kind of feel like everyone's basically saying they got, not everybody, but everybody's got Michigan going back to the playoff now. With all the stuff going on with Coach Harbaugh, we don't have to mention that if you don't want to. But with Blake Coleman, we'll see how he looks. He's starting to kind of get back into it after coming back from ACL surgery. J.J. McCarthy's been was really good last year. They got Josiah Stewart, the edge rusher, from Coastal Carolina, transfer. So I'm not gonna sit there and ask you, like, is it Michigan or everybody else in the back Big Ten East? But can Michigan get back to the Big Ten, the college football playoff?
I absolutely think they can. I mean, on paper, they're the best team. They returned the most production of any team in the Big Ten, and they were the best team in the Big Ten each of the last 2 years. So I think it would be foolish not to kind of come into the year thinking this is the best team. I don't think there are, like, obvious holes. You mentioned Josiah Stewart. I think that helps a lot. I do think, like, kind of one area where they dropped off last year from the year before was pass rush. It just, there was no kind of obvious guy who had you, kind of quaking in your boots if you were a quarterback. It was more of a collective effort than it had been the year before. But everything else, I just think is, like, it's there. I mean, you're talking about, we mentioned Blake Corum already, and Donovan Edwards is incredible. I mean, you've got 2 All-American caliber running backs. Like, do you have a great deep threat and wide receiver? I don't know. I think we'll see. But, like, Roman Wilson certainly has shown himself to be at least in that conversation in recent years. They're fabulous on the offensive line. They've won the Joe Moore Award 2 years in a row for the best offensive line in the country. Got a lot of guys back. We talked about JJ. They've improved a lot on defense. They were not as good in the biggest games last year. Like, they got shredded a little bit by TCU. Ohio State moved the ball. But again, those kinds of schools move the ball on everybody. But I think this is a really complete team. There's no obvious flaw for Michigan. And I think, kind of until proven otherwise, they come into the year as the favorite.
All right, Dave, it's time for us to bring up Northwestern. Hopefully this will be the only time to do it in this interview. But, of course, we all know what happened with now ex-head coach Pat Fitzgerald and all the stuff that's going on with that program now. They were wearing T-shirts during summer camp talking about us against the world. I'm just paraphrasing here in support of now ex-head coach Fitzgerald. What do you think happens on and off the field for the Wildcats this year?
Well, I don't think they were going to be very good to begin with, Sid. I mean, look, Pat Fitzgerald has been a great coach. He's the winningest coach all time at Northwestern. He brought a certain level of consistency. I mean, I do think it's fair to point out that, Gary Barnett won 2 Big Ten championships as the head coach, and Randy Walker won 1. Pat Fitzgerald didn't win any. However, he got them to the Big Ten championship game a couple times. He won a bunch of bowl games. They were a very competitive program. But the last 2 years, they went 4-20. And 3 of the last 4 years, they've won 1 game in the Big Ten. So things had kind of fallen off. Not kind of, they had fallen off. And I think he was going to be under a significant amount of pressure this year. Now, he had a long-term contract, but I think at a certain point, you look yourself in the mirror and you say, maybe I'm not getting it done. So I do think like that part of it, for people who don't really know the program well and nationally kind of just know that, oh, he's a really good coach. It is a really good coach. But again, they hadn't been very good. And I don't think there was much to indicate they were going to be very good this year either. So what happens on the field? I don't know. I mean, I think they have a few pieces. They got a good quarterback in the transfer portal and Ben Bryant, who was very solid at Cincinnati and Eastern Michigan. A.J. Henning, a Chicago kid, transferred over from Michigan. He was a 5-star player and was the Illinois Player of the Year. And he's a very dynamic performer, and that gives them something that they haven't had before. They have a really nice running back in Cam Porter. I think the offensive line's a question mark. But if they can kind of put all that together and the quarterback is better and they don't turn it over, I think offensively they could be okay. It's just crazy how bad the defense has been the last 2 years. They fired the coordinator, O'Neill, and had brought in David Braun, who now is going to be the head coach here unexpectedly. He's been part of really good defenses at North Dakota State, but it's a huge step up from North Dakota State to Northwestern. So we'll learn a lot, I think, on Sunday against Rutgers, just about the mentality of the team. I mean, that's probably the most winnable Big Ten game on their schedule, but it's hard. I mean, I just think they're in a headspace where it's challenging to kind of get yourself ready to play when there's so much else swirling around you.
Couple more minutes for our good buddy, the Big Ten Network's Dave Revsine here on Second City Sports. On Sports on Chicago, Lakina McGee, Cindy Brown with you now. Out of teams that we have not talked about yet, Rutgers, Michigan State. Is there not saying that they could challenge in the Big Ten East or West, but could perhaps make a surprise and maybe make a bowl game or maybe make a big bowl game like Michigan State, Rutgers, schools like that?
I could see Rutgers being better here, Lakina. It was a weird year last year. I mean, they started 27 different players on defense last year, which speaks to the injury issues that they had. It's just hard to build any kind of consistency. They haven't been good defensively, and that's what's weird, because that was their identity under Mark D'Antonio, the no-fly zone with their secondary and how many good players they turned in year after year. That hasn't been the case here. And so can Scotty Hazelton get this defense up and running? We'll see. They lost Peyton Thorne, their quarterback, another Chicago area kid, in the portal. He's going to be the starter at Auburn. He transferred after spring practice. Part of that was that I do think the staff is really high on Noah Kim, although not high enough to have named him the starter at this point. So that makes you wonder just a little bit. But I think part of the issue is that 2 years ago, they had that breakthrough year. They found Kenneth Walker in the portal. He turned out to be the best running back in the country. That just doesn't happen. That's kind of a lightning in a bottle thing. So maybe it was unfair to expect them to be at that level last year. I think we'll see. But I could see if things fall into place for them being an 8 or 9 win team again and competing. I think they're deeper, certainly on the offensive line, than they were at this time last year. And again, if you can stay even somewhat healthy on defense, maybe you can compete a little bit better than you did a year ago.
Last question from me, Dave, is, of course, you mentioned at the top that USC and UCLA will be moving to the Big Ten next year. Of course, Lakina is a traditionalist when it comes to our college sports. I am to a lesser extent as well. How much are you worried about we're entering a new era of college football? Because some people, including yours truly, would say that it's between the haves and the have-nots because of all the money coming in from these TV networks. I wanted to get your thoughts about that. Looks like now we're going to have perhaps new traditions and new rivalries in college football. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I do think we've had kind of a bifurcated world forever in college football. I mean, there are haves and have-nots. And, if you looked at the AP top 10 from 40 years ago, it probably bears an uncanny resemblance to the AP top 10 now. Are there teams that occasionally break through? Yes. I mean, Oregon has become a power, a team that's coming to the Big Ten. We saw TCU play for a national championship last year, but certainly TCU, there were years where they were really good, going back, many years ago. So I don't think it's unreasonable to say that I mean, is it different? Yes. Like I don't think it's unreasonable to say this is a brave new world and it's totally different than it was 40 years ago in some senses, because the conferences geographically fit together much differently than they do now. But I guess the flip side of it is I think I would argue that to a certain extent it's always been this way. I think it's just going to be more pronounced now. The issue, I think, is going to be within each of these leagues. Like are we going to see bifurcation within the conferences? I don't know. I mean, I think time will tell. But again, every league through the years has had teams that are really powerful and teams that aren't. I do think it's sad. Like, I think it's sad to see the Pac-12 break apart. There's incredible tradition in that part of the country. And I guess I hope that those teams, that Oregon will continue to play Oregon State, the Washington will continue to play Washington State, because those are important rivalries. And I get it. Like, I get it if you're a traditionalist and you say, this just doesn't make sense to me. I do understand that. I guess I would just say that, like, kind of there's constant change, right? Like we're constantly seeing change in our world. This is where it's going. These conferences are much more about being television partners now than they are necessarily about natural geographic rivalries. I think the challenge is, for a conference like the Big Ten, can you keep some of those rivalries intact, and can you figure out a way to play one another more often? Can you figure out a schedule format where you play every team every other year, and that you still, like, make sure that you're playing the rivalry games that matter to you every year or every other year at worst? Because without that, then I think you lose some of the stuff that we love about college sports.
That might make me feel a little bit better if they can do that. So I think that might help a little bit. Okay, Dave, thank you so much for joining us today. We know, you have, great programming during the football season. So tell us what you guys got, planned this season.
Oh, it's fun, Lakina. I mean, I just got off the set of Big Ten today. Do that every day at 11 o'clock Chicago time. Got a revolving cast of characters, and I love it. It's a chance to talk Big Ten football this time of year every single day, and we talk about some of the other sports too, the Olympic or non-revenue sports, and it's really fun. Obviously, Saturday we're in here all day, and we got 3 games coming up this Saturday, and a lot of weekends, certainly every weekend, basically, we're in studio pretty much all day on Saturday, and just hope that we're the home for Big Ten fans. Wrap everything up every Saturday night on the final drive, take you through every game that was played, and give you insight from our analysts. So it's fun. It's before the sun rises till well after the sun sets. We're here on Saturdays and loving every minute of it.
I love it. We gotta get you on during the college hoops season too, because I'm trying to get Sid to watch more college hoops. I'm gonna need some help. So if you can help me out in that
I watch college hoops, but the college football, you gotta convince me, Lakina. You know that.
Little stuff, baby steps. All right, thank you again. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dave. And where people can find you on social media and all that great stuff.
Well, I'm not a huge social media guy, but I'm on the app formerly known as Twitter, at BTN Dave Revsine.
All right, Dave. Again, we got to get you on during the college hoop season. Great to talk to you soon.
Great.
You guys you can check him out, of course. Like he said, every Saturday during the football season, every weekday as well. So, Dave, thank you again. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks, Sid. Thanks, Lakina. Take care.
All right, thanks, Dave.
You too. All right, Sid, we got to stretch here. Now, of course, I was Big Ten Network's Dave Revsine. So, Sid, we got to do a little bit of stretching here. So, you want to go ahead and take a break? Or
yes.
You want to... Okay.
Yeah, let's get a quick break in, and let's discuss the Chicago Bears in the preseason finale when we return.
All right, Second City Sports on Chicago. We keep it in the ground this time, talking NFL and Bears coming up right after this.
This year, my mom got me the perfect bag for back to school.
These colorful binders help me stay organized.
These headphones are just what I need for studying.
These new sneakers are just what I need for the new year.
This This jacket is a real must-have.
My parents got me the skateboard I wanted. It's pretty cool.
These scissors really come in handy in art class.
These colored pencils, too.
These new socks? They can be a real lifesaver.
I finally got my own phone to stay in touch with my mom.
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you. Your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Hey, this is Dr. J, and I listen to Sean and Maya in the morning.
Welcome back to the Monday edition of Second City Sports. We're live and live in color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. I'm Sid. That's Lakina. You can follow yours surely on the Twitter, X, and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. SIDKID80.
You can follow me at Keenan McGee on the Twitter, X, at Keenan McGee on the IG.
And we have less than an hour and a half left of this extravaganza we call a Sports Talk Radio Show. You have any questions or comments for us, you can always go to the comment section at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in those questions or comments in the comments section. Lakina will get them up on the screen for you. And Lakina, before we get into our Bears talk, I just have a little bit of a breaking news story real quick. Our guy, Joshua M. Hicks from War Media, and he covers the Chicago Bulls for It's the Bigs Media, along with Drew Stevens. They do a great job. Joshua Hicks will make his debut on those CHGO Chicago Bulls Talk podcast on Thursday with our guys, Big Dave Watson and Matt Pack. So it's been long overdue. You know, I've been telling Big Dave to get Josh on their show for the last couple of years. It's finally happening. So tune in this Thursday to the CHGO Bulls podcast with Big Dave Watson and Matt Pack. Our guy, Joshua M. Hicks, will make his debut on that fabulous program.
I will definitely be watching it on the YouTube channel, on the Facebook page. You know, it's also catch on this the Facebook page as well. But yeah, I think we better get a shout out to that. I think we helped set that up, so we better get it.
Yeah,
we better get a shout out there, guys. But yeah, we'll get those guys back on soon, probably right before the NBA season starts. So let's real quick before our girl Kayla Anderson comes on, talk AFC South and the Titans. The Bears, of course, did the cuts like every other NFL team. They did their respective cuts, down to the 53-man roster. Of course, Tyler, big, hello, bye-bye to PJ Walker. If you saw if you heard his comments about Walker's comments after that Bears-Bills game, he knew. I guess he kind of knew that he was going to be gone. And sure enough, I mean, they paid him about $6 million like in June when they signed him, and now he's going to be looking for another team. So what do you think about that news?
It wasn't too shocking when I heard it as well. Tyson Bagent has played well throughout. Yeah, Bagent, I should say. He's played well throughout the preseason, even though it's preseason. He almost every time he touched the ball, he led the Bears to some scoring drive, whether it was touchdowns or field goals. So, and the kid is light on his feet, and he has a little bit better grasp on the offense from what I've heard, and he has a little bit of an arm as well. Of course, talents like that takes time to develop. I'm not saying he's going to be the starter of the Bears team. I'm not saying that, but you need a capable backup in the NFL to survive, especially the way that Justin Fields plays. Tyson Bagent, I think, it fits what Luke Getsy wants to do from the quarterback position in an offense. Now, as far as the game is concerned, I thought the Bears' first team offense looked better toward the end of that first quarter into the second quarter when they were led to which led to their field goal drive, but the first two drives were not good. But Justin Fields, I thought, looked okay, especially on that pass completion to DJ Moore toward the end of that first quarter. I think him and Moore are going to be one of the top 5 quarterback wide receiver duos in the NFL when it's all said and done. So I'm not worried about those two. But defensively, there's still some flaws there, but I still believe that defense is going to be much better than it was last year. You can't go nowhere but up, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely, and I think that's sort of like the thing, especially so. They did too bad. I mean, I know that I'm sure the Bills didn't want to show too much stuff, but I kind of feel like okay, yeah, it was decent, but I'm wondering, I'm hoping that that he is I'm talking about is the answer. Because I know has looked really good, but he's been going up against second and third string guys. So if knock on wood, God forbid, Justin Fields gets hurt and he seems to be a little bit out of his element, then I think we're gonna have to call somebody. So, but we'll see. I mean, I think he definitely I think he definitely earned the spot. So. It's fine. I know. Look, this is PJ Walker's first rodeo, unfortunately, but I think we'll see if Badge is going to be that true number 2. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Also, we talked about the running backs, the depth that they have, Lakina. I like Khalil Herbert. It looks like he's going to get the first crack of the bulk of the carries, at least to start the year. He's going to be starter, but Deontay Foreman, you have backing him up. I think it's going to be a great 1-2 combo, but I think the Bears have a nice 3-man combo. Of course, add rookie running back Roshan Johnson to the mix as well. I know he had 9 carries for 22 yards on Saturday in that preseason finale against the Bills, but looks like it could be a nice 1-2-3 combo in terms of sharing carries in that backfield to help out Justin Fields.
Yeah, and I think that's probably if you want to, if you're Eberflus, you want to try and perhaps maybe not have Justin, run as much as he did last year. We know he can run, but I think that the key is that to have him pass it and not to have to depend or give it to the running back. I mean, and not have to worry about having Fields use his legs all the time. I think that's going to be really the thing that I'm looking forward to, especially when it comes to the Bears. I mean, Nathan Peterman, I know that I think he hurt himself, so I think that's going to be interesting to see how that goes. But with Chase Claypool, there's still questions about him. That O line is still a little bit suspect. That O line's banged up. On the defensive side, I mean, we'll see how some of these guys look. But yeah, I'm kind of, like I said, I'm still sort of like in, question mark mode with the Bears, if that makes sense.
It's every reason to be, because remember, this team was 3-14 last year. You had a lot of turnover from the Matt Nagy era around this time last year. And now Ryan Poles, the GM of the Bears, has some of his guys in there. And Matt Eberflus is in year number 2 of his system, along with some of the other assistant coaches on that staff as well. So the Bears are expected to make a big jump. We'll give you our predictions next week as far as how many games we expect them to win. But I think if everything stays on track, Lakina, if you don't have any major injuries, i.e. to Justin Fields, this team should and will improve. How much, we don't know. I'll give you my predictions next week. But I liked what I saw in Justin Fields throughout the preseason. Lakina, I thought some of the stars should have played in that second one last week at Indianapolis, but there's neither here or there now since it's over. But what I saw in bits and parts on Saturday against Buffalo, Justin Fields, given time, just like any other quarterback, but given time, he can read through his progressions. If there's nothing there, then you take off running. Last year, he had to take off sooner than he wanted to because the offensive line was terrible via the pass protection. So we've seen growth, some growth here and there with Justin Fields with the limited time. I'm talking about on the field time that we've seen that we saw in the preseason. But now it's for real, and they just had to lace him up and strap him down and go get him against the Packers in 2 weeks.
Interested to see what happens. There is Listen Second C Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. Lakeem McGee, Cindy Brown with you. Gonna do some of this news rapid fire. Of course, the rest of the NFL news since got our girl Kayla coming up at the top of the hour. So of course the Trey Lance trade that came about not about 6 o'clock, I guess last Friday, and I guess what was like a 4th or 5th round pick. So to the Cowboys. We talked about right before we started recording, said that Brock Purdy's elbow better be bionic, and you better get Sam Darnold from those early years with the Jets, because if Purdy's not back to at least being close to 100%, and if Sam Darnold is not the Sam Darnold that is the Sam Darnold that we saw the last couple of years in Carolina before he got hurt, San Francisco's going to have some problems.
I agree with you. And we talked about what the 49ers over the last few years, they in win now mode, and they still are. But like I said, the pressure is on everybody with those two quarterbacks and with GM John Lynch, who had to make this trade, because remember, they really didn't want to trade him to the Cowboys because they play in the same conference. They was trying to trade to the AFC team, but they had to get a deal done. So the Cowboys had the best deal out there, obviously. But on the flip side for the Cowboys, will Trey Lance be a threat to Dak Prescott this year? I don't think so, because he still has to take his time to learn the playbook. But if Dak is ineffective, or heaven forbid Dak Prescott gets injured again like he did seriously a couple of years ago, then I think Trey Lance becomes a threat. But you still have Cooper Rush there. He knows the system. And so I think Dallas will be okay. But I think, remember, after this year, Trey Lance still has, I believe, 2 more years left under that contract. So I think he's going to become more of a threat next year. I believe that Dak Prescott this is his last year under that guaranteed money deal. So there's a whole lot of pressure on the Cowboys this year. There's more pressure on Prescott first, the quarterback, and then head coach Mike McCarthy second.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see what happens with that, of course. Texans rookie CJ Stroud has been named the starting quarterback for week 1. Of course, the other rookie from Ohio State. He actually didn't look too bad in that last preseason start. So again, D'Amico Ryans is putting a lot of his faith into Stroud. And look, no one's really expecting the Texans to really do too much of anything this year. So at the very least, be respectable and make sure Stroud stays upright. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think D'Amico Ryans, their new head coach and former Texans player, by the way, he has the program back on track. There will be a respectable bunch, of course. That defense is going to be fine when it's all said and done. Like you said, offensively, they just got to create some points. And this wasn't a shocking move there to put C.J. Stroud as the starting quarterback. So I think Houston's on the way. I'll give them a couple years. I think they'll be a bigger threat.
Absolutely. So, excuse me. There was a couple of trades. Now, any other NFL nuggets that you got for us before the top?
Aaron Rodgers, he played in the preseason game. Yay, if you're a Jets fan. He did throw one touchdown pass in his only series of action as the Jets beat the New York Giants. Lakina, I was listening real quick. I know we're up against that. Maybe we'll talk about it with Caleb, but it's all or nothing for the New York Jets. If Aaron Rodgers stays healthy, I think the Jets do have a chance. I think they will be a playoff team. Now, how far they'll go in the playoffs, I don't know, because the AFC is stacked this year. Yeah. But the Jets better have almost everything fall right on their lap. If they don't, it's going to be they could be really, really good, or they could be really, really bad.
Absolutely. So that's good. This could be interesting to see what happens with that. There was another trade that, the veteran, the former 4th rounder from the Steelers, Kevin Dotson, has been sent to the Rams, extra O-lineman. So especially if you heard Matt Stafford's wife Kelly's comments, they could definitely help a lot with that and having a veteran presence there in that O-line. So this could probably actually help the Rams, I think.
Yeah, as we said about the Rams, they're going through a transitional period right now. We saw all the injuries up and down their roster last year, especially to quarterback Matthew Stafford. Trust me, I'm not wishing this on him, but if he gets one more good hit, because remember he had concussive issues last year as well, and he was dealing with that elbow injury from the season before when they won it all. If Matthew Stafford gets one more good hit, I hate to say it, but unfortunately his career may be over. But you got to protect him as much as possible because the Rams are expected to contend this year. How realistic is that? We'll find out, but you got to protect them if you're the Rams.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, we'll talk some more NFL with Kayla Anderson as we do our divisional previews. We finally start on those. We'll preview the AFC South, of course. So, Lakita McGee, Sydney Brown, a lot to do still here. But of course, we'll do Old School TV Monday, a little bit more recent with the recent passing. We'll explain that in a second. Of course, we have not forgot about our buddy Brandon. Has been very adamant about talking about his Astros. So, you got some company in the AL West, Brandon. So we'll talk. Baseball coming up during hour 2. So a lot to do still. Lakita McGee, Sydney Brown, Second Seed Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. We got Kayla Anderson coming up right after this.
No, I don't know though. I'm scared. I mean, you're
Do you know that you're in my lane?
No, not at all.
Are you not paying attention? Are you texting?
I was just checking in with my mom. I was telling her that I thought we'd be home by 6.
It's okay. There's enough time. Just pay attention.
I'm not even halfway through my text. There's no way. I'm not even going to look up.
My babies are in the car. You have to pay attention.
It's just supposed to be a quick text. I'm so sorry.
Hi, I'm Tom Brady, the director of DODEA. September is National Suicide Prevention and Awareness Month. The simple act of reaching out and caring for those in our communities is something we all can do. Just being there for someone you care about can be a tremendous first step in getting them access to confidential resources and support that they need. It only takes one person and one small act and 1 minute to make a difference. Let's make a difference.
Many will hear the calling. Few will earn the title. United States Marine. The few, the proud, the Marines.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of Second City Sports on this Monday edition. We're live in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. I'm Sid. That's Lakina. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter, X, and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You can follow Kayla McGee on the Twitter, X, and Kayla McGee on the IG.
We have less than 55 minutes left or so on this fabulous program we call a Sports Talk Radio Show. You have any questions or comments, you can hit us up in the comments section at Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in those questions or comments in the comments section. Lakina will get them up on the screen for you. And just a daily reminder, you can also catch Sports Zone Chicago now available on Roku TV.
All right, so since while we're waiting for our buddy Kayla Anderson, let's go ahead and kick our divisional preview, talking AFC South, and of course, the Jaguars won the division last year, and it'll be interesting to see. I know that they're no longer the hunter anymore; they're now the hunted. So we saw that Trevor Lawrence made that nice little jump last year. Of course, their big comeback against the Chargers, probably as surprising, they went as far as they really, could. I don't think anybody really expected them. So, of course, you got Trevor Lawrence, you got Travis Etienne, you got, of course, Christian Kirk on the offensive side, of course, Zay Jones as well on the defensive side. I mean, we'll see. I mean, they got Roy Robinson Harris, a guy that's been around for a bit in the NFL, and a few other guys. So, what do you think about the AFC South? And is it really the Jags and everybody else?
At least on paper, it's the Jaguars and everybody else. Of course, you mentioned that we'll talk about the Tennessee Titans in just a moment, but it looks like they're going through a little bit of a transitional period right now, even though they still have Derrick Henry at running back. You still have Ryan Tannehill, quarterback. Indianapolis is going through a rebuild. They have rookie quarterback Anthony Richardson. And you still have the Houston Texans we talked about with C.J. Stroud getting the starting nod, the rookie quarterback out of Ohio, so he's getting the starting nod there. So on paper, it looks like it's the Jaguars and everybody else. But what I'm worried about is I think this is why you have a veteran head coach for a young team like Jacksonville with Doug Peterson. Mm-hmm. If I'm a Jacksonville Jaguars fan, I'm worried about what the players did last year, especially like you said, with the second greatest comeback in playoff history. You don't want your players coming in, quote unquote, big headed, thinking that you could just walk through and the division title will be handed to you. This is the NFL, it's a week to week league. Anything can happen, but I don't think Doug Peterson will let that laziness seep into his young team.
Absolutely, and I believe our guest is here. Sid, introduce her, please.
Yes, she is part of the number one sports radio station in Nashville, 104.5 The Zone. She is the co-host of their morning show, Ramon, Kayla, and Will. You can listen to them and watch them every weekday morning from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Central Standard Time on YouTube. They're on Twitch TV as well. Just search for 104.5 The Zone in Nashville. It's been a while since we had her on this program, so she's good times. She's great people. She's a great person to talk to, and she's going to preview the AFC South with us, including the 2023 Tennessee Titans. Let's please welcome back Miss Kayla Anderson to the show. Kayla, how you doing?
Oh, hey y'all, how's it going? How's everybody
There we go.
doing?
There we are. There you are.
Hi, Kayla. Good to have you back on the show. How are you?
I'm good. I just literally came from Titans practice where we're obviously one day ahead of cuts that are going to happen tomorrow. So a lot of just getting some of those guys in the locker room that we might see for the last time, gauging kind of where things are at when this 53-man roster comes out, in the next couple of days.
Very, very interesting this time of year, Kayla. So I don't want to say this, out of turn, but do you think, is this kind of like a make or break for Mike Vrabel? Is he on the hot seat?
So actually, I would say no to that for just the reason of a new GM here in Ran Carthon. I think if you go back and look at the relationship between Mike Vrabel and the then general manager, John Robinson, I don't think it was one where they necessarily agreed upon a lot of the moves that were happening, maybe even some of the draft classes that John Robinson drafted. We clearly saw Mike Vrabel in the war room when A.J. Brown was traded. He was not happy and seemed somewhat surprised about the situation. So I think with this new duo of Ran Carthon and Mike Vrabel, these guys see eye to eye. They are on the same page. Collaboration was used a lot when Ran Carthon was brought in. So I think it will at least be another couple of years before anything happens with Mike Vrabel hitting the road. But if anybody sees the road first, yeah, it will be Mike Vrabel, considering Ran Carthon is new to this building. He is, a general manager who will now get a little bit of time to prove, he's going to put together a great team. But honestly, I think they're off to a good start considering the free agents that they've signed and what they've done so far here in training camp.
Let's focus in on the quarterback position for the Titans, Kayla. Of course, you have veteran Ryan Tannehill. He's taken his knocks both literally and figuratively on and off the field over the last few years. Of course, Malik Willis, he struggled to start the preseason, but he had a great performance last Friday against the Patriots. I think he made the team based off of that. Who's going to get the start in week 1 in 2 weeks when they travel to New Orleans to face the Saints?
Yeah, it'll definitely be Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill is their QB1. At least for this year, right? There's no extended deal for right now into next year and beyond. So that's more of the conversation that might come after this season. Now, if he has a great season, who's to say that he might not get a 1-year extension, right? But right now, starting with week 1, unless something happens with an injury, Mike Vrabel has made it clear that Ryan Tannehill is that starter. And look, I think to a lot of people outside of Nashville and even to some people in Nashville, he's that mediocre quarterback. But let's point to some of the things in terms of last year that he wasn't able to operate at the highest A because the offensive line was absolute trash. And nobody's going to sugarcoat that. And he was dealing with an ankle injury, let alone 2 ankle injuries. So I think there's still enough for him left in the tank if he has an offensive line in front of him this year that can do its job, at least remotely. And then you've got some new weapons like DeAndre Hopkins here who we're really excited about. And we've seen some great chemistry between him and Ryan Tannehill early on. The real big talker here, guys, has been the backup spot between Malik Willis and the rookie Will Levis. That is still battling out as we speak. I can say coming straight from practice today, Will Levis has been a little banged up with some sort of a quad injury. He has not played in the last 2 preseason games, which kind of has put Malik Willis in front of him by a little bit. But then Mike Vrabel left the door open the other day and said, look, I'm not ready yet to make a decision on who the backup is. What I will tell you guys, I think they're going to keep 3 quarterbacks on the roster.
Probably a smart thing to do if you're the Texans. So last time we had you on the show, Kayla, we talked about the Texans defense. They were kind of like that great defense that a lot of people didn't know necessarily weren't really household names. Now in this case, there are a lot of household names, and the defense has been kind of up and down the last couple of years. So can they sort of be that defense that we saw that last time we talked, and perhaps maybe make a play in the AFC South?
Yeah, and the Titans defense, I think you're right. It has gone through some ebbs and flows, specifically 2 years ago when they were not going to necessarily name the defensive coordinator. And it was kind of like Shane Bowen was just kind of floating there, and it was Mike Vrabel who was really calling the shots. Once they named Shane Bowen the defensive coordinator, I do feel like this defense has taken steps forward. And last year, while the pass defense was near the bottom of the league, the run defense was near the top. So I think this year, the whole goal is to kind of be right there, a top 10 defense, having both the run defense and the pass defense in the top 15, right, in the top 10. And they have added some pieces with Arden Key coming over from Jacksonville. He has brought a whole new energy level to this team that I can't even describe on here because it's off the charts, right? And so you've got Jeffrey Simmons and him who literally say they battle in practice to see who's the loudest and who can bring the most juice to the defense. We've seen a lot of good things from him there on the edge. And then you add Harold Landry is back in the mix. Remember, Harold was hurt all of last year with that ACL. He has been at all training camp. He's good to go. That ACL is good to go. And then, you add to that the Danico Autry, who continues to be a force on that defensive line. That D-line might be one of the best in the entire NFL, and it's only going to help the back end that has improved as well with new DBs coach Chris Harris in there.
We're hanging out with our good friend, Miss Kayla Anderson from 104.5 FM, The Zone in Nashville, right here on Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. We're live in living color. Sid Lakin here with you. Kayla, let's go back to that Titans offense and focusing on your running back, Mr. Derrick Henry. If you believe the reports or the rumor mill early in the offseason, he was put on the training block. Obviously, there were no takers. How many miles do you think he has left in the tires for him to carry this Titans offense?
It's fair to ask, right? Because a lot of the talk nowadays with running backs and really a lot of the devaluing of running backs we've seen, it's fair to ask that question. And from everything that I have seen, you all, is that he still has a lot of juice left in the tank. This is somebody, and I've been covering this team for 7 years. I've covered NFL previous to this. I've never seen somebody like him who is that just athletically gifted and built the way that he's built. The injury that he has that we all talk about is that foot injury, but he bounced back last year like it didn't even happen. And from everything we've seen, Derek is in incredible shape. He's ready to go. The mindset is always there. You never have to worry about that. And we've seen him in practice. Like, he didn't play in the preseason, but we've seen him in practice. He still has those bursts. He still has, like, those breakaway touchdowns we've seen in the past. I still think he has that in him as well. And he can be a threat there in the red zone just because of the big body that he is. But I think it will help you also that they've added Tajay Spears, the rookie out of Tulane. I think that that's going to allow the Titans to take Derek out, maybe not run, give him as many carries as we've seen in the past, and give him a break now and then, because you've got Spears, who has shown by all accounts that he is going to be a really big part of this offense and this team moving forward and in the future. So I think that's really a deadly 1-2 punch that's only going to allow Derrick Henry to continue to have that longevity.
Yeah, I think, I really like Spears. I think he was among the leaders in rushing last year in the Conference USA, so they definitely got a steal there. Now, let's talk about DeAndre Hopkins for a second. Of course, no longer with Arizona, he's now with the Titans. Can he really, be, that go-to guy, that playmaker in this offense?
Yeah, and I was kind of I'm always doubtful, right, on those guys that they're towards the end of their career. We saw it with Julio Jones, who is going to be, in my opinion, a future Hall of Famer, but was really on the last leg of his career when he landed in Nashville and really was hurt a few days into training camp and never had that connection with Ryan Tannehill. One thing I've learned about Ryan Tannehill since covering him over the last several years is he has to build that connection with his receivers. And sometimes it happens faster than other times. I kid you not, guys, on day one that we were allowed out at practice, he connected with D-Hop on like a pass like that you would never expect the first time that he connects with a new guy that to be the case. And ever since then, he's just had this chemistry with DeAndre Hopkins, and he's gone on about that too, where it's a little bit rare that he has that, but that just goes to show that DeAndre Hopkins still has a lot in the tank. And the stuff about practice that we've heard, from other folks and everything, that he doesn't practice, that's not true from what I've seen. He's been out there almost every day. He works just as much as some of the other guys do. Mike Vrabel's made it clear that they do have a maintenance program for him because he is a more of a veteran player, and he has to do things a little bit differently with conditioning. But other than that, he's been available, and he has had a sure and special connection with Ryan Tannehill. Some of the plays he's made in practice and in joint practices, oh my goodness, you guys, that's a huge addition to this team.
Yeah, looking up and down the roster, Kayla, and you mentioned about DeAndre Hopkins. He's going to draw a lot of attention as far as coverages from the defense. Who's going to be the number 2 wide receiver to help out DeAndre Hopkins? And who's going to be that number 3? Because looking up and down that roster, you closer to it way more than we are here in Chicago. But I see a lot of quote-unquote no-name guys. Someone's got to step out to help out Mr. Hopkins.
And you're not wrong, right? And the guy that's going to be next, who was really expected to be their number 1 if they didn't have DeAndre Hopkins, is second-year player Treylon Burks out of Arkansas, who they traded, obviously, A.J. Brown away to Philadelphia to trade up to get Treylon Burks last year. He had issues with conditioning last year, but then we saw when he was in there glimpses of what he could be. A big body, really somebody who, if he can stay healthy, he's going to make a difference, and he is going to help DeAndre Hopkins, and DeAndre Hopkins is going to help him, right? It's going to be something they can feed off of each other. The only bummer part was he got a little bit banged up when they were in joint practices a week and a half ago. The good news is, and I can tell you guys this because I just came from practice, he's back at it. He's back at practice. I think he's going to be ready game 1 against the New Orleans Saints in 2 weeks. So that's really promising. It was nothing too bad for the knee that he had suffered. So I think that's going to be positive. As for the number 3, it kind of was Kyle Phillips, but this is another durability issue. He was banged up on a punt return in one of the preseason games, and we are probably expecting him out for another few weeks. So there's veteran Chris Moore, who comes over from Houston, who's been pretty good in camp. There's Nick Westbrook-Akine, who not a lot of people know about, but he has stayed on this team for the last 3 seasons. He's versatile. He's a blocker as well, which they love, and a special teamer. So it's kind of a weird situation right now with some injuries there. But yeah, for now, that's kind of what they're looking at. They're hoping that Traylon and DeAndre Hopkins, and then let's not forget about Chigakonkwo, the tight end that could be utilized a lot because they like him as a weapon in terms of versatility as well.
Let's talk about that secondary for the Titans. Like, we talked about, guys that probably are no names, but, Kevin Beard, I think, is probably one of those guys that can definitely, I think he led the team in tackles last year and had a couple interceptions. So what do you think about that secondary? Can they perhaps maybe try to make a go at it to try to maybe, challenge guys like Trevor Lawrence and everyone else in the AFC South?
Yeah, they're taking it upon themselves this year because of the awful numbers last year with the pass defense. It was awful, and nobody's denying that. They're not denying that. I think they have a bit of a chip on their shoulder because they know what they have to prove this year is we got to be better. We cannot let what now is a pass-happy league, and you mentioned Trevor Lawrence. I mean, that's the foes. That's who they're competing with atop of the AFC South this year, and everybody, and rightfully so, is going to give Jacksonville the upper hand right now. But if they can continue to kind of progress in the right direction and be, a better pass defense, be a better secondary, I think that they can definitely cause some chaos within the division, especially. And a big addition to that is Sean Murphy-Bunting, who came over from Tampa Bay. He has a ring with the Bucs. He's brought a lot of just savviness, a lot of leadership. He might not have been a big name down there, but he's one of those free agent signings by Rand Carthon that has really fit here, and he's really challenging the younger guys as well. Then let me mention Christian Fulton, who, when he's good, we call him Fulton Island. He's been banged up. Last year, he was dealing with soft tissue injuries. Mike Vrabel called him out. He took it upon himself to get his own trainer this last offseason. He trained in Miami. He looks phenomenal. His body is different. His mindset is different. And he has been really good in training camp. We're talking about sometimes shutting down DeAndre Hopkins. He's had some really good matchups and covered his own and held his own. So I think he's going to have a big year, which is really, really important. And then you have Kevin Byard, this duo of Kevin Byard and Amani Hooker, the safety duo back there, who they've been nothing but solid since they've been with the Titans. Kevin Byard asked to take a pay cut this year. Really didn't even blink an eye. He's back here. He's a team guy through and through. He's the veteran and the leader in that secondary. And I expect him to just continue on what he's been, which is a solid presence. And I added the Chris Harris, the addition as a DB coach. He has brought it up another level. The guys react to him. He's brought in some new mentality and just way of doing things. I think that's going to help that secondary.
We spent the last few moments with our homegirl, Kayla Anderson from 104.5 FM in Nashville, right here on Second City Sports, on Sports Zone Chicago. Sidley Keen hanging out here with you. Now, Kayla, let's get into the rest of the AFC South. You said that you think that the Titans, if everything goes right, has a chance. But where do you rate the Titans in that division with Jacksonville, who are the overwhelming favorites? Of course, Houston and Indianapolis both are starting over with rookie quarterbacks. Where do you see the Titans rank in that division? And assuming that the Titans don't win the South, do you realistically think they have a chance at a wild card? Because overall, the whole AFC conference is stacked.
It is stacked, and that's why the biggest bet to make the playoffs is definitely winning the division, right? And I think that anytime you have a Mike Vrabel-led team, the mentality is we're going to win the division. And up until last year, at really that game with Jacksonville, they had a chance of doing it. They were winning the division. They were ahead in the division, and then it was like Jacksonville came on like a hurricane, right? I mean, it was just like, here we come with Trevor Lawrence just finally coming into his own with a stable coaching staff in place for once. So I think it's one of those things where right now Jacksonville is going to get my benefit of the doubt. They are the top team right now in my eyes in the AFC South. Just looking at what they were coming off of last year, the momentum they had, they've made some additions. I feel like their defense is improved as well. But anytime you have a quarterback like Trevor Lawrence and kind of the progression of him, we all expected him to be good in the NFL. And after that rookie season, we were like, what happened? And then figured maybe it was just Urban Meyer being Urban Meyer and stunting that growth a little. But anytime you have a quarterback like that, I think you've got to kind of give the upper hand to that team. So I think that they are the top of the AFC South for now, but I can't count out a Titans team ran by Mike Vrabel just because they're such a tough team. They're such a physical team, and they've got weapons if they can keep them healthy. I feel like they can give Jacksonville in the division a run for its money. And that is what it comes down to, right? Those head-to-head matchups within the division. So I would put them first and second, and then I'm probably going to have – this is a toss-up. I like C.J. Stroud a lot. I don't know as much about Anthony Richardson. I really don't. I know he's got all the physical tools. He didn't really perform that much in the preseason, and when he did, he was mediocre. I think Jim Irsay has a little bit of a screw loose in certain situations where sometimes I can question him in general. So I'm going to put – I like what Houston is doing. I like the direction, the leadership they have. So I'm going to put them in that 3 spot, and then I'm going to go ahead and say the Colts are going to bring up the rear there.
All right, Kayla, I know you're a Wazoo girl. Let's switch gears to talk a little college athletics for a second. Of course, with all the weird things, USC, UCLA, they're going to the Big Ten next year. Then you've got Washington, Oregon are going to join them, and then Stanford and Cal might be going to the ACC. Colorado's going back to the Big 12, and Wazoo, they don't know what they're going to do along with Oregon State. So what do you think about all this craziness happening in the Pac-12? I mean, I know you got to be upset about this.
Man, you want to talk about a topic that will fire me up and show the part of me that people probably don't want to see is this topic. And I actually was speaking about it today at Titans practice in the locker room because, it was brought up where are Washington State, Oregon State going to land? Because I think the talks are heating up that Cal and Stanford head to the ACC. And that leaves the two state schools up there kind of in the dust. And I had somebody come at me at Twitter and say, oh yeah, nobody wants the leftovers or whatever they want to call it. And I'm like, first of all, let's go head to head with some of these schools in terms of football the past several years in the Pac-12. Colorado was nothing. Arizona is trash at football. Arizona State is not very good at football. There's other things that they can point to with the market size. But if you want to go head to head and have an argument with me about at least Washington State, we're not at the bottom of the pack. And there is a lot of tradition with that program. It's just that you got the two smaller schools that got left kind of in the back end of things. They're either going to go to the Mountain West and reform, that, or add to the Pac-12, or just, in my eyes, Big 12, why don't you just add Oregon State and Washington State? What's the big deal? Why not pad up as much as you can? Because the ACC is still maybe not going to be intact if Big 10 takes a little bit more from there. Why don't you just pad up on what you had? Those are two good programs when it comes to different things, too. It doesn't just have to be football. So I think it's going to be ever-changing. I don't think this is over yet. I think this is going to be something we're going to be talking about for the next few years with different shuffling of conferences.
Last moment, too, with Kayla Anderson from 104.5 FM, The Zone in Nashville, right here on Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago. Sid Lakina hanging out here with you. Kayla, we know that you've done great work throughout your career on television. Now you're transitioning to doing morning radio on a sports radio station in Nashville. Talk to us how's the transition has been for you.
It's been great. I was in local sports news this is my 7th market that I've been in. So you can imagine, the teams that I've covered, and I was blessed with every moment that I did that. But with local sports news, it's just, you get minimum time. Every year I feel like I was not being able to really share stories and discuss like everything that I go to practice. Every time you spend time in the locker room, the games that you diagnose and break down, you're not able to do that because you just don't have the time. We've got 4 hours in the morning in Nashville, and to be able to speak my mind and to share the knowledge that you pick up, over the years of covering the teams here and just even other teams, right? And college football and all the different sports. It's been really an awesome transition because you're able to really have conversations and you don't have a time limit. You can go on for kind of as long as you want, and it's something a little bit different every day. And then I still get my taste of freelance television, so I get to do some of the fun things with college football, some sideline stuff. So I get my taste of that a little. But yeah, it's just the ability to be able to share like what I see on a daily basis and connect with those listeners who we get to talk to all the time who call in.
How is Ramon Foster? I mean, he is if you guys saw him play in the NFL, I mean, he was a riot. He still is. I've seen his Twitter. Yep. So what's it like working with him?
It's great. He's like a big teddy bear. It's so funny because I joke about this all the time, but I'm so serious. Like, you don't ever talk about the offensive line as much, when it comes to breaking down positions. I feel like I am like an offensive line connoisseur after working with Ramon over what is now almost a year now, because he has brought so much, knowledge and like important things in terms of that position alone that we always joke with him. Offensive line gets no love, but on our show, they get a lot of love because he definitely brings that knowledge. But just overall, as a player, 11 years in the NFL for the Pittsburgh Steelers, it's such a pleasure to work with somebody like that who I can myself learn so much from, the listeners can learn from, and we can have really good debates because he's open to other people's criticism and other people's ideas. And he's a really just fun-loving person. So it makes for a lot of like fun moments on the show. We don't take ourselves too serious all the time. And we're about the same age, so we get like, we got the same music genres. We get the same kind of pop culture stuff. So that's been a lot of fun being able to like be on the same page there too.
Before we let you go, Kayla, I have a little slight surprise for you. Of course, like Lakina said, we watch you can watch the show on YouTube live. You can watch it on Twitch, as I've been doing for the past few days, preparing for you to come on our show today. You were wearing a Seattle Mariners jersey this morning. Yes. Of course, Lakina is a big Seattle Mariners fan for the last couple of years. I was a big fan of this player in the 90s. I just wanted to show you my same gratitude. I know it looks bad because of the 3D screen, but I got the teal King Griffey Jr. jersey. If you can see that there, I know it looks bad if you watch us live, but I just wanted to show you that I got love for Seattle too. So
I love that, right? One of the best players to ever play the game.
Yes.
The kid.
Yes.
I'm telling you, there's no better swing, the backwards hat. Like, there's so many moments that stick out in my childhood. I salute y'all for giving us a little love, because you always have to respect greatness, right?
Yes.
Yep. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, outside of Frank Thomas, because I'm a White Sox fan, I really like King Griffey Jr. So I saw Kayla wearing that Seattle jersey this morning. It's like, I'm going to show some solidarity and bust out my King Griffey Jr. jersey.
I respect it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Kayla, as always, thank you so much again for joining us. Don't be a stranger. It's been a while since we had you on. So
I know.
Yeah.
Where can people find you? No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I enjoy it. No, I enjoy it, y'all, and I really appreciate it. It's always fun hopping on here, and just for your guys' interest in, this neck of the woods too, and the football going on here. So we always appreciate it, and I appreciate you guys for having me.
Okay, where can people find you on social media?
Yeah, at Kayla Anderson TV on Twitter. X, I guess now. And, I forget that. And then Instagram at Kayla Anderson TV there as well. So I'm everywhere on there and definitely covering all sorts of sports.
Love it. We love it. So again, Kayla, yeah. Let's do this again soon. So yeah, thank you.
Yes.
All right, thanks, you, Kayla, and stay safe.
Bye, y'all.
All right,
Bye.
thanks, Kayla.
All right, of course, you can catch Kayla on 104.5 The Zone. Like I said on YouTube too. So if you're not in Nashville, you can catch it. You can catch a visual version too with Ramon Foster, who is a riot, by the way. Like she said, I mean, he is.
Yes,
he is hilarious. And excuse me, I can't talk. I can't talk now. We're having so much fun. We can't talk now. So yeah, of course you can catch her with Ramon Foster, Will Bolin on 104.5 The Zone. Also on YouTube if you're not in Nashville. So make sure you guys check that show out. And I like how she feels. She feels the same way I feel about the whole conference realignment thing. I like it a lot.
Yeah, it's definitely a changing of the guard in college sports. So, like she said, this is far from over. We're going to see some more changes to come.
All right, so let's take a quick break, Sid. Our last break of the show, and of course we'll talk. I know our buddy Brandon's been saying, "Hey, what about the Astros?" Like, we're going to talk some baseball coming up next.
Stay right there.
Stay there, yeah. Of course, obviously we also got Old School TV Monday. We're going to do something a little bit recent, with the recent passing. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that, and a whole lot more still. Lakina McGee, City Brown, Second City Sports on Chicago, baseball talk, and more coming up right after this.
This year, my mom got me the perfect bag for back to school.
These colorful binders help me stay organized.
These headphones are just what I need for studying.
These new sneakers are just what I need for the new year.
This jacket is a real must-have.
My parents got me the skateboard I wanted. It's pretty cool.
These scissors really come in handy in art class.
These colored pencils, too.
These new socks, they can be a real lifesaver.
I finally got my own phone to stay in touch with my mom.
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you. Your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Hey, this is Dr. J, and I listen to Sean and Maya in the morning.
Welcome back to Second City Sports, the Monday edition. We're live in living color right here on Sports Zone Chicago. I'm Sid. That's Lakina. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter, X, and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
And you can follow my Kayla McGee on the Twitter, X, and Kayla_McGee on the IG.
We have less than 25 minutes left of this extravaganza we call a Sports Talk Radio Show. If you have any last-minute questions or comments, you can always go to Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page or at Sports Zone Chicago on YouTube. Type in those questions or comments in the comment section. Lakina will get them up on the screen for you.
All right, so we got to do a lot of this stuff rapid fire here because we got a lot to talk about before we go into Old School TV Monday. So let's talk some baseball. Of course, Cubs win 3 out of 4 against the Pirates. Look, I know it would have been nice to have, to get a sweep, but you know what? At this point, I'll take just win the series, and that's what. Look, they got a big series coming up starting tonight against the Brewers. So I'm not going to say this is going to be for the division, but I'm glad they didn't look ahead. I think they were like 8-4 against, those teams under 500 teams. So that's what you want if you're a Cubs fan. So that's a good, and you're actually in a good spot. So, what do you think?
Yeah, we said this on our last show on Friday, Lakina. Take care of the teams you're supposed to take care of on the schedule that's below 500. They've done that. Now you put yourself in a great position to make a push in the last days of August before September starts on Friday to make this push to get into the playoffs. As we said before, we'll keep saying it again. With this great starting pitching that the Cubs have been fortunate enough to have so far this year, even despite the injuries of Marcus Stroman, who's still out, if you average between 4 to 7 runs a ball game, if you're the Cubs, you put yourself in a great position to win. Shout out to Jordan Wicks on Saturday, the rookie pitcher who started Saturday's game. In 5 innings pitched, he had a career high of 9 strikeouts, and he was backed up by that Cubs offense who provided him with 10 runs as they beat the Pirates 10-6 in that third game in that series in front of a national television audience. But yesterday, those bats came out again, and they put the whooping stick on the Pirates early. You like the way that Cody Bellinger has picked it up. His return from when he was injured a couple months ago has been huge. Seiya Suzuki is starting to pick it up. You need Ian Happ to pick it up with the bat. Nico Horner's starting to pick it up again. Jaime Candelario, who they picked up at the trade deadline, he looks like he's starting to pick it up again. So all systems are a go for this Cubs team right now. It's just that let's see if they can do it against better teams with 500 records, which they're going to start tonight, playing 14 straight games with teams with 500 records or better. And like I said, it starts with that 3-game series with Milwaukee tonight. Today and tomorrow, night games. Wednesday is the afternoon game. I don't know, you have the starting rotation in front of you, Lakina. I know Jameson Taillon starts tonight. I believe Cal Hendry starts on Wednesday.
All right, I'll double check that. But check out Jordan Wicks's start on Saturday on national television. Well, I'm sure only Chicago and Pittsburgh folks probably saw his start. But yeah, he only allowed 2 hits and struck out 9 in his debut. I think that's the best by a Cubs pitcher, and I think what about like 10 years or something like that. So, nice showing by him. And look, I think you want to kind of go up against the Pirates for like confidence purposes and such. So yeah, I mean, look, I would love to have gotten that second game back. I think they had a shot to win that game. But, it is what it is. So, yeah, you're going to lose games like that, unfortunately. So, but, yeah, I think, look, you take 3 out of 4. Look, this is going to be when you're really going to show – we're going to see whether or not this team is worthy of a playoff spot. So, going into their schedule, I mean, I kind of feel like they're the team that could definitely be – if they get in, they'll definitely probably give teams some fit. So, but again, I mean, we'll get to the rest of the MLB in a second. But look, you got Milwaukee, you got Cincy. I know they struggled this weekend. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But going into September, you got San Francisco. They're still fine for a playoff spot. Arizona, you got a 4-gamer there. Next week, they're playing for a playoff spot. You got Colorado, which you shouldn't have no trouble there. You got to go at Arizona and get a fish at that West Coast trip. So you got a little bit of time here to try to make up these wins, and pick up some wins and gain some ground. So we'll see if they can do it.
Yeah, I think for this Cubs team, it's very important, obviously, to play well against the Brewers. If you could take 2 out of 3, I think that's realistic. I think you'll put yourself in a better position. Even though you're 4 games out, you'll get only 1 game if you take 2 out of 3. Of course, the sweep I think most Cubs fans will prefer. But realistically, I think taking 2 out of 3 will send a strong message, not only to the Cubs team to gain that confidence, but to send the message to Milwaukee is say, hey, you may own the division standings-wise, but you got to come through us to win it.
Absolutely. And Justin Steele pitches tomorrow night, and Hendricks pitches Wednesday in that banner matchup. So yeah, so the Cubs should win 2 out of 3. I'm gonna put it out there. I don't know if they can sweep. That's gonna be hard to do against a Brewers team.
Right.
That's sort of a mirror image of them. So I think they can win 2 out of 3. So we'll see what happens. But take your baby steps here. One game at a time.
Yes.
Look ahead. That's a key here. And going back, going to the South Side for a second. The Sox, you win. Look, they win 2 out of 3. They won 2 out of 3 against Oakland. Yay, bravo, yay. But yeah, with all the craziness that happened in that Friday's game, we won't rehash that. But I mean, they looked okay on Saturday and Sunday. No, Yohan Makata actually, look, he actually played like he should be playing in the majors. Yay! He got a couple 3 RBIs. Made a couple of big catches. Yesterday. So yeah, what do you think? Yeah, real quick with your Sox on the
real quick, because I want to get to the rest of baseball real quick. If Yohan, I know this sounds like a crazy idea, Lakina, but hopefully new general manager Chris Getz would get this if they let him cook, as the kids would say. If Yohan Makata continues to play like this between now and the end of the season, maybe you can actually trade him. Yay! And number 2, Mike Clevenger, who pitched a well of a ball game yesterday, 10 strikeouts in 7 innings pitched. Just maybe he behaves himself. He may earn a contract to come back here next year.
Yeah,
we'll see. Other than that, like you said, the White Sox, they're winding down the season here. We get into the month of September. We'll see if they can actually play spoilers to some of these teams they have to play on their schedule.
Yeah, and look, Clevenger. Look, I think Mark Potch even said it's bad when Mike Clevenger is one of the few bright spots for your team this year.
Yeah, him and Luis Robert Jr.
Yeah, I'll say those 2 are like your bright spots. So you take that for what it's worth. But I mean, look. I mean, it's set up. I should say for the Sox. I mean, they play Baltimore. Starting tonight. That's going to be very hard. We'll get to them in a second, but they could definitely play spoilers for some of these teams. I mean, again, short and sweet. They play Baltimore. They play Baltimore starting tonight. They have Detroit, Kansas City, Detroit, KC, Minnesota. Ooh, yippee. So yeah, I mean, they could definitely get some games, but this team, they'll probably lose maybe half these games. So we'll see. But let's get to the rest of the MLB. My Mariners, we talked about with our girl Kayla Anderson just a couple minutes ago. I mean, they're now in sole possessor of first place in the AL West. Yay! This is actually the latest that the Mariners have been alone in first place. You go all the way back to 2003. So that pretty interesting. Look, I like how they're playing. Yeah, it's helped that the other teams behind around them have not been good. I know Texas had a very rough weekend. Houston, Brandon, sorry, I know they had an okay weekend, but they didn't really gain much ground. So what do you think about the Mariners, and can they stay in first place? Excuse me.
Can they stay in first place? It's going to be tough, but I think they're going to battle Toronto for that last wild card spot in the American League. I do expect a fight for that. Julio Rodriguez has really turned it around since the All-Star break. Their starting pitching has actually improved since the All-Star break. The bullpen, they had issues to start the year, but it looks like it's starting to come around now. So Scott Servais, their manager, former MLB player, one-time Cub in 1998. If the Seattle continues to swing the bats, they'll be there. Like you mentioned, Houston, we thought they were going to be good. They were starting to pick up until this past weekend. But Texas has really been the disappointment here in the last couple of weeks, not just with the injuries, but them just not scoring runs. Their pitching has been there. I'm talking about Texas, but them scoring runs, I know they still have a couple of key guys out of their lineup. That's really hurt them. So Texas got to pick it up here quickly. Like I said, I don't see Seattle stopping anytime soon. I'm not saying Seattle's going to win the division, but Seattle's not going to go away quietly. You got to take them out, if you know what I mean.
Right, they're not going to let go of that division. Now they got the lead, and a lot, Scott Servais, his guys, I'm sure they were hoping they would do it quietly. Well, you can't be quiet anymore. You're now in first place.
Right.
You have Oakland, you host Oakland coming up starting tonight. So hopefully they can, pat a little bit of their lead there. Now, speaking of Baltimore, of course, we talked about the Sox. We're facing them 2 out of 3, against Colorado, Not bad. I mean, I know a lot of some Baltimore fans were very disappointed that they didn't get that sweep, but to kind of keep themselves, distance, themselves from the Rays. But look, you'll take a 2 out of 3, game against Colorado. I mean, you should be able to get a little bit of ground against the Sox. So yeah, but I kind of like where Baltimore is going. They're playing it very well and very close.
Yeah, we talked about them growing up before our eyes last year. I think they learned from last year, and it's serving them well this year, having one of the top records, and not just the American League, in all of baseball. And this team is definitely going to be a threat come playoff time. But the only thing that I'm worried about is still a little bit with their inexperience, but their starting pitching. We'll see what happens with that. And speaking of the Tampa Bay Rays, the team that's chasing them, they took 2 out of 3 from the Yankees over the weekend at home. Lakina, what was up with the Randy Arozarena? He's their all-star from the Tampa Bay Rays. He got hit in the 8th inning. I didn't think it was on purpose, but Randy took exception to it. The dugouts, both dugouts came out. And then I think this was personal. I don't think Tampa Bay called for this, and Kevin Cash, their manager, called for this. But I think Randy Arozarena took it on himself to steal bases personally. As a personal vendetta. He stole second and he stole third. Of course, Siri, his teammate, Tampa Bay, started coming out of the dugout again, yelling at the Yankees, and they came out again. Then, of course, nothing else happened, thank goodness. But if you're on the flip side looking at it from the Yankees' perspective, I think it's just all a pure frustration what's going on for them this season. I think you can sick of forward as far as them not making the playoffs. Nothing's going right for them. And I think Tampa Bay, if they can play this out properly, they can catapult this whatever silly incident that happened yesterday to get them back on track and to compete with Baltimore in the AL East.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely, that was definitely a frustration, sort of that hit there. And look, there really hasn't been any animosity between these two teams. I think it's more like, I don't want to say envy, with the Yankees, but I think you wonder, like, as they do with the Rays, they've been building themselves up and, building from the farm system up. That's where they are right now. And the Yankees, a lot of their stuff has not worked out, so there might be a little bit of envy there, a little bit of green with some of the guys on that team. So again, we'll see. But I mean, Tampa, I think will definitely. I know Tampa and Baltimore will be playing each other a lot in these next few weeks before the season's out. So those games could decide that AL East. So we'll see what happens here now. Real quick before we move on, I know that Philadelphia has looked. They've actually been hitting the ball very well. They swept the Cardinals. They're still right there in a wild card. I think they lead the league in home runs this month. So in the franchise, well, at least in the franchise part of it, they broke a franchise record there. So they could definitely perhaps maybe make a go at it and make things interesting in a wild card.
Yep. And making one last quick pit stop back to the AL East, the Boston Red Sox. They lose 2 out of 3 to the Los Angeles Dodgers in an interleague series over the weekend. The rematch of the 2018 World Series. Mookie Betts got his proper respect all weekend. Of course, he helped lead the Red Sox to that title back in 2018. Of course, now he's a member of the Dodgers. He swung the bat very well last weekend at Fenway Park. Of course, he knows all the dimensions and things along that line. Freddie Freeman was swinging the bat as well. So Boston, we talk about Tampa and Baltimore. Boston is still kind of hanging around, but if you're Boston, you still cannot lose series. So as we head down to the last days of August as we get into September, Boston, they still hanging in there, but they got to tie things up there. Now, you mentioned going back to the National League, the San Francisco Giants, they avoid getting swept. They beat the Braves last night on Sunday Night Baseball 8-5. Of course, the Braves end up winning the first 2 games of that series, win the series overall 2 out of 3. But like you said, regarding the Cubs situation, and I think the Giants do come here next weekend, I believe. So the San Francisco Giants, like I said, they're not the team they were 2 years ago when they shot everybody, went over 100 games. But this team fights. They have the pitching, especially in their bullpen. And they still got some guys that you may have forgotten about, but they come through in the clutch. And you saw that last night, avoiding the sweep of Atlanta.
Yeah, and I think they really needed that to stay within the distance in that wild card. So it'll be interesting to see with what they got about 7 weeks left. So, or maybe 6 weeks, give or take. So interesting to see how these teams go. Now, going into the schedule, you got the Angels and the Phillies. Of course, we talked about the Phillies, trying to stay ahead in the NL wild card. Yankees and Tigers. Of course, we talked about the Orioles hosting the White Sox starting tonight. Toronto. I mean, I don't want to have given up on them. They lose 2 out of 3 to the Guardians. They haven't been playing very well lately, so this will probably, if they don't do well in this series, if you can't win, at least sweep the Nationals, I think you might have some problems there. So we'll see what happens during that series. Boston, of course, he'll try and stay within distance in the AL wild card. They host Houston starting tonight. Texas, they've had their struggles lately. They faced the Yankees, and of course the
Mets.
Well, the Mets. Oh, yeah, the Mets. Oh, yeah, that is the Mets. I'm sorry. Kind of look alike there.
That's all right.
The logos look alike. The Guardians and the Twins. The Twins are 6 up on the Guardians as we're recording this, so we'll see if the Guardians can try to trim that lead.
And also to finish out the rest of the schedule for tonight, we'll have San Diego at St. Louis. We'll have, of course, Milwaukee here in Chicago to face the Cubs. Remember, Tuesday night's game between Milwaukee and the Cubs can be seen nationally on TBS. And, of course, Pittsburgh at Kansas City, Atlanta at Colorado, Oakland at La Quina, Seattle Mariners, Cincinnati at San Francisco, and Arizona at the Dodgers. And other series starting tomorrow, we'll have the Battle of Florida, Tampa Bay at Miami to take on the Marlins. And we will have the Padres take it on the St. Louis Cardinals.
Yeah, thanks for nothing, San Diego, for getting swept by the Brewers. Thank you very much. That was not good. So much. This is Second City, and that is your schedule for baseball for this week. This is Second City Sports. Sports on Chicago. Lakina McGee, Sydney Brown with you. A couple more notes before we go into Old School TV Monday. I want to give a couple of shout outs to Victor Hovland, of course, our buddy Christine Manica's guy from Norway. He's the first Norwegian to win the FedEx Cup, and also is the 5th player to win both of the final 2 events of the FedEx Cup playoffs. He's only 25, so he's the youngest to ever do it. So now that he had a really great year this year, and look, I mean, he seems very laid back about it. He said, I might just go to Norway for a little bit, and chill for a second. So I'm like, you gotta love his attitude. I can see why Chrissy likes him a lot, because he definitely kind of has that sort of laid back swagger about him.
Yeah, it's nice to see, especially like I said, with the game of golf going through a transition right now. There's some of the old guards like Phil Mickelson, Tiger Woods, especially Tiger with his injuries winding down his career. As always, ask it again, who's going to be some of the young, fresh faces of golf to drive those viewers to start watching their events? Is it Victor Hovland? Is it Jordan Spieth? Who's it going to be? But like you said, you got to like the attitude of Mr. Hovland right now. Keep winning these tournaments.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see if he can, as they build up. I'm sure by next, and also they have the Ryder Cup too coming up too. So he'll be a part of that for the Europe. So we'll see how that transpires. We'll talk a little bit about Ryder Cup as they get closer and closer. Now, also a shout out to El Segundo, California. They win the Little League World Series via a walk-off. Lewis Lapp will have a moment that he'll probably he'll probably remember forever. 2 1 on, 2 out, as they beat Curacao 6-5, and which is odd because the reliever for Curacao had not given up a run in the entire tournament. Of course, Carl Ravage, of course, he's done a great job covering the Little League World Series this last month for ESPN. Says that, and of course, Lapp hits the walk-off 2-run home run. So. But yeah, I think that's the first time a team from that region has won in about a decade. So congrats. And this is actually the 3rd straight time that the U.S. has won the Little League World Series.
Yeah, congratulations to us, USA.
Of course. Of course, got the U.S. Open going on right now as we speak. So Sloane's, not Sloane, but Coco Gauff, I think she'll probably be, especially since she beat Iga Swiatek, who I'm sure is going to be the favorite. She actually beat her in the tournament in Cincinnati. The first time she's beaten her, and actually would go on to win that title in Cincinnati. So I think that'll definitely help her with confidence-wise. We'll say with Kevin Eubanks, we'll see if he can build off that momentum he's had so far this summer. Of course, Djokovic, you got to think he's a favorite. Carlos Suarez, he's a defending champion. So it should be interesting, this U.S. Open coming up.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens with all those big names. So hopefully, for us, for the Americans, let's see who's going to dominate, who's going to step up and be that champion. Who's going to be some of the rising stars we'll see hopefully come out of this tournament. Like you said, it's always an interesting time in the year, upstate New York.
Absolutely. So anything else you got before we go to Old School TV Monday?
Oh, yes, I saw this on your Twitter, and I saw a couple of highlights last night. Simone Biles winning another event. She prepares herself for the Paris Summer Olympic Games in 2024. I know she took some time off. We mentioned it about a few weeks ago, Lakina, but it's nice to see her back out there again, dominating as usual. She is calling me crazy. I know we always get caught up living in the moment, whether we admit it out loud or not, but she is the greatest female gymnast, probably the greatest gymnast overall that I've ever seen. And we've seen some great ones growing up in our time, Lakina. Of course, Dominique Dawes, Dominique Combaniche. We talked about what Carrie Stark. She had her great moment in '96 Olympics with winning that gold medal off a bad ankle. But Simone Biles has it all. Let's not forget Gabby Douglas, too, for a few years ago. But Simone Biles tops them all, leading that group.
Yeah, Nastia Lukin, Carly Patterson, Sean Johnson. Yeah, so there have been some really great gymnast, and of course you saw something different about her. She's adding a little bit more of the difficulty that she's been known for years, and she's having fun. You see that smile on her face, so that we didn't see in the last Olympics in Tokyo. So look, like I said, USA Gymnastics has a very tough they have some decisions to make coming up, especially the World Championships come up in a couple, I think like next month, I believe, and also of course with Olympics too. They can only take 4, so it's gonna be interesting to see. You got her, you got of course Gabby Douglas, Suni Lee, of course, who won the all-around in the last Olympics. So, and of course, you've got some up-and-comers as well. So, yeah, they're going to have it's actually not a bad problem to have those here in the United States. So, but we'll see.
Yeah. Also, what's the name? Hernandez. I forget her first name. She was part of
Lori
Hernandez. Thank you. Yeah, I saw that she's going to try to compete again. Because she didn't compete in the last Olympics, unless I'm wrong. But I remember her competing in the last Olympics. She did back in 2016, but she didn't do it the last go around.
Yeah, she has some various injuries the last few years, but she is healthy. She didn't compete in this past weekend's national championship. She said she does want to get some meets under her belt before the Olympic trials. So yeah, she's gonna try to go ahead. Like I said, she hasn't competed, I think, in a meet since the Olympics from 2016. So we'll see how she's 21 now. People forget she was only 13 or 14 when she made the team in 2016. So we'll see how she does. But yeah, like I said, it's a good problem to have here in the United States. So they're gonna have a lot of great choices.
Yep. So we'll see what happens there. All right, Lakina, you're listening to Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago as we wrap up today's show. This is a little bit different, but we'll try and make it light and not just light, but respectable as possible as we have this special edition of Old School TV Monday. Of course, it comes off the heels of former television host, game show host, Mr. Bob Barker, who passed away over the weekend at the age of 1999. As we salute still the current TV show, the game show The Price is Right. It's an American television game show where contestants compete by guessing the prices of merchandise to win cash and prizes. In 1972, revival by Bob Stewart, Mark Goodson, and Bill Todman of their 1956-66 show of the same name. The newer version added many distinctive gameplay elements. The contestants are selected from the studio audience. The announcer calls their name, invoking them to come on down, the show's famous catchphrase. The program premiered on September 4th, 1972 on CBS, and Bob Barker was the series' longest-running host from 1972 until June 2007, where he was replaced by current host, comedian, and actor Drew Carey. And The Price is Right has aired over 9,000 episodes since its debut, and it's the longest-running game show in the United States. It's one of the longest-running network series in United States television history.
Yeah, and you can watch some of the earlier episodes from the Barker era on Pluto TV. I'm sure they're going to be adding more episodes too with the news of his passing. He was definitely an icon. I know there's some stuff that came out about him, off, mic, but we're just going to concentrate what's going on camera. And look, he was very warm. He was very kind. He didn't care what race you were. You got kisses from women. I know some women are cringe on that, but look, it was the 70s and 80s, folks. So but cash prizes. He was a big part of what made that show so great. And still is to a Drew Carey. I mean, listen, I don't want to, damper him. I mean, he's actually, as the years have gone on, he's going to be doing his 17th. This is going to be his 17th year, I think, doing it, this coming September. And I'm sure there's
I can't believe it's been that long for him.
I know, right? I mean, I'm sure if you ask him, I'm sure he doesn't believe it either. So, again, I know a lot of the episodes are on YouTube, but going back to Barker, but I think he was definitely an icon. Like people always said that at our age and maybe a little bit older, he was the guy that got us through whenever you were sick. I know that I watched a lot of Price when I had the chicken pox and such. So I remember when he stopped dyeing his hair and turned gray in 87. I remember that moment. I was watching when that happened. He's turning gray. Okay, he still looks He just looks nice. So of course he was a big proponent of having your pet spayed or neutered. Of course, his late wife Dorothy Joe was an animal advocate. So he continued that tradition as well until his dying day. So I mean, he was definitely the epitome of charisma, looks, and just wanted to see the contestants do well. So and he actually played around the contestants a little bit every once in a while. But it was all in good fun. So you love it. You gotta love it.
Yeah, and don't forget, Bob Barker has famous models that worked on this program for years, like Claudia Jordan, Nikki Ziering, Heather Kozar, and Holly Hallstrom. I believe Gina Lee Nolan from Baywatch was on there too. About a year or two before she did a TV show, if I'm not mistaken. So you had a lot of famous models and actresses that came on to that show that really made their names for themselves. And I saw this on Twitter last night. Like, I don't know if you saw it, but the Vanna White, who's the current co-host with Pat Sajak on Wheel of Fortune, she put it out on her Twitter page over the weekend. I saw this last night. She was a contestant on The Price is Right 2 years before she joined the Wheel of Fortune when that program got started.
In 1980, she's just fresh off from South Carolina. Of course, that was one of the first places she went when she got to California, and I don't think she got up there, but she was definitely very memorable. Also, too, former NBA player Dean Garrett before he went to Indiana back in '84. They actually just showed that episode, I believe, on Pluto TV about a couple of days ago. And also, too, someone who's been on the show before, our buddy Ryan Field was on The Price is Right.
We definitely got to ask him about the next time he comes on.
Go through his Twitter and his Instagram at Ryan Field. If you saw from the last, from over the weekend, he had his fashion choice wasn't great. I've teased about that, so we'll definitely get him back on. We'll definitely talk about that. But I mean, looks definitely a before they were stars moment, and when I think it's been almost $2 billion. Even to this day, that Price Right is given away in cash prizes and all that stuff. Make sure the taxes, folks. Remember the taxes. Pay taxes on that stuff. There's a little PSA there from us, but I think like I said, truth or consequences, whatever he did. I mean. He definitely kind of, was that guy that epitomized the game show host. I mean, you think of, there was, someone actually posted a picture I think yesterday with him and Alice Trebek, who died a couple of years back. So definitely two guys that, epitomized our childhood or no longer with. I'm sure they're having a nice little reminiscence right now up in heaven, if you believe in that.
Yeah, I was just like you, Lakina. Like I went to school 99.999% of the time, but wherever you were sick, or for me it was summer vacation, or you had that week off, a couple weeks off of school each year for like Christmas or spring break. My late mother and late grandmother, they both watched that program, especially my late grandmother. She was a big fan of their shows. Of course, other game shows we'll review for Old School TV Monday coming up down the road. But my late mother and grandmother both liked The Price is Right. Like you said, you saw the joy in people's faces when they run that grand prize, a new car or a new vacuum cleaner. Oh, it was great.
Yeah, double show, wherever you win, like both shows, you win everything. You saw the reaction to some of those. Yes, I mean, it's all on YouTube. But so it still goes on. I mean, look, The Price is Right is still going on. It's still one of the top rated shows in daytime. Drew Carey, we've seen his various looks throughout the years. Of course, Bob kind of stays consistent with his looks. Of course, the only thing is that he turned gray. But we've seen, Drew now a little bit bigger, a little slimmer. Of course, now with the beard. Of course, the COVID beard, he's kept that. He's not going to get rid of it anytime soon. He's already said that. He even said it on his Instagram. But as a tribute, of course, he became a bigger cult figure in Happy Gilmore, Adam Sandler. That he became a really bigger cult figure during that too. I know.
Yeah, especially with the younger generation at that time. Yes.
Yeah, so I know Sandler posted something on his social media over the weekend. So yeah, so look, we also one of the all-time greats, and icons. So yeah, that's what I always say. Like, look, we got to honor our icons while they're still with us. And I'm glad he still got. I'm sure CBS gonna be playing some various specials and stuff. This season coming up with the price, especially with the writer strike going on. They're gonna need to fill the programming. So you might be seeing them at the prime time. But yeah, let's look out for that. But yeah. So yeah, I'm sure. But yeah, let's give a little remembrance to Mr. Bob Barker.
Yes, rest in power, Mr. Bob Barker. As we salute for Old School TV Monday, The Price is Right. Lakina, take us home.
All right, you follow Keenan McGee on the Twitter, X. Keenan's going to be on the IG.
You can follow yours truly, Sydney Brown, on the Twitter, X, and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, it's SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. SIDKID80. Make sure you download that Sports Zone Chicago app wherever you get your apps. Make sure you follow Sports Zone Chicago on all social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Please subscribe to our podcast at War Media Podcast. That's WARR Media, PODCASTS. And we are available on all podcast platforms, including the iHeartRadio app. And while you're at it, please give War Media a follow on all social media platforms on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at WARR Media. And thank you very much in advance for your support.
Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
We'd like to thank Dave Revsine for the Big Ten Network and Kayla Anderson from 104.5 FM The Zone, Nashville's #1 sports radio station. We'd like to thank both our lovely good friends for joining us on the program today.
Absolutely. And of course, we're going to have this up too. So of course, you guys missed it. Don't worry. You catch them in other episodes of our show and other shows on Roku TV. Of course, you can, wherever you get your apps, the Roku TV app, just type in Sports Zone Chicago right there in your app store. You can catch our show. When you get to Roku, of course, you can catch our show, Sean and Maya, the Smoke Fellows, What's Up Cousin, so much other stuff too. So it's all right there for you. So again, if you missed our show, don't worry, we'll be too mad. Just check us out on Sports Zone Chicago's Facebook page and YouTube, and also the on Roku TV.
Yes, and be sure to catch Sports Zone Chicago every Monday, every Friday from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, right here on Sports Zone Chicago. One more again, as the kids would say. Catch Second City Sports live and live in color right here on Sports Zone Chicago every Monday, every Friday from noon to 2 p.m. Central Standard Time.
Yes, sir. And of course, you got baseball, as we're gearing up for the pennant chases there. And of course, the WNBA, it looks like maybe this guy might miss the playoffs. We'll see. But we'll keep that up too if you guys want to keep up with that. And of course, we'll talk about the week 1 in college football coming up this weekend. So a lot of sports we're going to be talking about this Labor Day weekend, sis. So I can't wait.
Yes, and don't forget, we're still going to continue to preview the NFL season as we count you down to next Thursday's start of the regular season between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Detroit Lions. So a lot going on, and we're just getting started.
Absolutely. So for Sid, I'm Lakina. Enjoy the sports, enjoy the weather. I know it's finally not too hot in most cases, but those of you in Florida, of course, in the hurricane coming up, so stay safe. And also to other places to stay safe as well. Don't be good to each other. This has been Second City Sports on Sports Zone Chicago, and we'll see you Friday.
Dub Bears, holla!